First presidential campaign, 1976, and of course Rendezvous with Destiny, which covers his victory in 1980. Craig also had a front row seat for the convention we've been talking about in August of 1984, and he joins me now. You know, Craig, listening to Reagan there make his pitch to wayward Democrats, it's not dissimilar to the pitch that Obama was trying to make to disgruntled Republicans, both in 08 and even somewhat in 12.
I would say there's some similarities, but I think that there's a lot more to make the case that Reagan was really making an appeal to culturally conservative Democrats to join what he called a coalition of shared values in 1980. You know, people forget, in the 1980 convention, he made an open appeal to Democrats and independents, and he cited Franklin Roosevelt very favorably to 17,000 Republicans. He continued that all through the first 4 years of the administration, and then, of course, did so again at the 84 convention in Dallas. He was always thinking about building. He was always recruiting for the party.
And so it strikes me, so it's interesting, you know, Reagan, everybody views Reagan's legacy in the Republican Party through the lens with which they want to make their point.
Right. Sure.
Right, a little bit right now.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? You know, if they're a conservative firebrand, they think of Reagan 64 and Reagan 76, and they don't talk about the
kaleidoscope of Reagan.
Right, of course, and there is this. But you talk about this, Reagan was trying to figure out how to build a larger coalition. It was out of necessity. There were a lot more registered Democrats than registered Republicans, so it was out of necessity. You don't hear that rhetoric from some of these conservative leaders
that
today.
is such an important point, Chuck, because we've gotten away from, the party has gotten away from, you know, broad-based appeals. But what Reagan did in 80 and 84 is he narrows the appeal, but he broadens the base. He talks about a consistent message of a lot of things that are culturally conservative, that are politically conservative, economically conservative, but they fit with his particular political framework. He doesn't just go after Republican voters. He goes after consistently Democrats and independents. And as a matter of fact, in the 80 campaign, he got 25% of the Democratic vote nationally, and in Pennsylvania, he got over 30%.
Well, and look, part of that was his convention in 84. This was the convention that made Gene. Well, the 84 one that we were just talking about. This is the one that made Jean Kirkpatrick a star.
Yes,
and
that's right.
Remember her fleeting, like she was going to run, and it was, you know, the label of San Francisco. So it was a two-pronged approach, right? You want to paint the other party as out of the mainstream, which is what that convention's job was.
But that year it wasn't hard to do with the Democrats.
Well, they went into San Francisco and then they created this moniker that's stuck with the party since.
Yeah. Yeah. Everybody was really surprised at Kirkpatrick's speech. Of course, it was wildly received there, and don't forget too is that the Republicans were mindful of their gender gap problems, so they were putting a lot of women forward. Catherine Ortega opened the convention. She was the treasurer of the United States, and Jean Kirkpatrick spoke, and Maureen Reagan spoke. So if you're Chris Christie and you're watching what Chris Christie's trying to do, and look, and everybody's going to claim in 2016 that they are the kaleidoscope of Reagan, right? That they're borrowing from this. If you're Chris Christie, how do you fix your problems with conservatives using a Reagan model? Well, I think what he's got to do, he's got a good record as governor, actually. He's done a lot in terms of union reform and cutting spending and cutting regulation. I think
who had a more, quote-unquote, liberal governorship, Chris Christie or Ronald Reagan in today's terms?
That's hard to say, because Reagan did a lot of welfare reform. He cut property taxes.
But he did have to raise some taxes. He did sign an abortion rights bill.
All governors go through that, yes. And he actually said, you know, he said, my feet are in concrete. And then when he realized that he was going to have to raise taxes, he said, the concrete around my feet is cracking. So he had a sense of humor about those things. But yeah, he did things that he didn't feel like he thought he was going to do. But once he was elected, he felt like his hand was forced. So
how does Christie unite this? Because it seems to me it's the libertarian wing on one hand that's going to be deeply skeptical of him, because this is Christie who's coming across as a pro-government Republican in a day and age when the Republican Party is not very pro-government.
Well, I think what he's got to do is corruption. He's got to run against Washington corruption, and he can do that very easily. 2, he can run on his record. 3, I think, is an outsider to Washington, and he can make a broad-based appeal by running against Washington.
Of everybody that's mentioned, if you're watching, you know Reagan, you know Reagan's biography better than anybody. Who's running has the best chance of being a 21st century Reagan?
If it plays out, if Christie makes a mistake and becomes the heir to the Bush-Ford wing, then that makes Rand Paul the heir to the Reagan-Goldwater wing.
How about that? It's going to be fascinating to watch. Craig Shirley, thanks for coming on.
You bet.
All right. He's, of course, author of Reagan's Revolution and Rendezvous with Destiny. Download